Charles Tassell, welcome to the program. How are you?
Very good. Thank you, Tom.
So, Charles, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do as an investor. And I know that there's a political reason we have you on the show as well, but we'll get to that in a minute.
So, Charles Tassell, I'm Chief Operating Officer of the National Real Estate Investors Association. I've been engaged there for, I don't know, 6, 8 years, a number of years beyond that where we work together. But I've also done a variety of things in housing for the past 20 plus years. I've worked for council members, for staff, worked congressional campaigns, and even been a local elected official myself. So, from a lobbying perspective, registered lobbyist in multiple states, a lot of DC work. So kind of covering it from different gamuts, but also different facets of it as well, being on both sides and making sure that you're, working on both sides of an aisle is always important. So make sure you can work with people no matter what is always important.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, let's talk about your real estate investing first. So what kinds of real estate investments have you done over the years? And, what do you like? What do you not like? That kind of thing.
So I actually started work with the apartment association a little bit, and a couple of guys, we were on a drive to the Capitol to meet with some folks. And one of the gentlemen looked at me and said, "When are you going to buy some apartments?" I said, "I don't know. I usually get called in when there's an issue and there's a problem." He goes, "We do make good money on these too." I said, "Okay, nobody's talked to me about this part of it." So we started investigating a little more, and especially in 2008 and 9, as recession hit, we started buying properties. And I can very vividly remember going to a closing, buying a little 5-unit building that had the plumbing ripped out, which was fine because the bathrooms needed to be redone. We're like, perfect. And I'm driving back, and there's a used Ford Astro van on the road for sale for more than I paid for that building. I was like, "Oh, this is good." So we've started off with actually some single family homes, did some flips with those. Actually started looking at, we did a couple of flips with some small apartment buildings, then bought a couple of larger apartment buildings, a pair of 7 units, a 26-unit building, another 24-unit building. And then we went from there. We jumped into, at one point we had 68 units. We bought another 168 in one fell swoop. That was too much to bite off at one time.
Okay.
That was pretty sizable. We had some management company working with us on some of that. Eventually we started downsizing, and as we stabilized different assets and had them looking good, we had some offers we couldn't refuse, and I've sold off most of those pieces. And it's been really good since then, and looking at different entities and businesses to get involved with on different aspects of real estate.
Gotcha. So a time arc from you buying up in the down cycle of 2008, we're recording this in 2021. Mm-hmm. So not, certainly not a lifetime.
No.
13
time.
Years.
Yeah. And doing quite well with them, looking at other real estate and do some passive investment, which is, if we take the, are you employed, self-employed, business owner, or are you actually a passive investor? If I could take Kiyosaki's, rules or principles to work off from, making that adjustment, because it is a different thing. There's an illusion you have when you're self-employed that you're running a business. And transitioning actually to a business. I just said goodbye to one of my managers. I'm heading off on vacation for a couple of weeks, and he's like, "I got everything under control. Take care."
There we go.
That's a business. As far as the investors, and having some of those funds just coming in allows me then to work on things that I really enjoy working on.
Got you. So let's make sure we define that properly. You're saying a business is something you can walk away from, not something that you have to be. I don't mean walk away for good. I mean, you can walk away, go on vacation, not have it fall apart. That's what you mean.
Correct. One of those differences, employee, you go, you get your job, your set hours. Self-employed, if you're not there working, you're not making money.
Yep.
Whereas the business is an entity that's running and structured, and it's an entity that's running on its own, that you don't have to sit there and hover over and be there doing it. That's the beauty of it. So getting those little generators up and running, getting your money to work for you rather than working for your money is a critical step.
Huge difference. Huge
Yes.
difference. So you bought during the down cycle, which makes logical sense when one thinks about it outside of it. But how many people are afraid of down cycles, afraid of buying, then think that everything's falling apart, or that's not the time to do real estate because it's all collapsing?
Oh, that's, there's two phrases in mind. One is you're trying to capture the falling knife. So that's always a careful thing. When do you actually grab the knife as it falls? Sometimes you can wait and see this really is the bottom, and you can see where it bumps along the bottom. But sometimes by the time you're seeing that, it's too late. Other people are coming in and swooping in.
It's
So
already starting to curve up again.
correct. I like Warren Buffett's line: buy when people are selling, sell when people are buying. So the big REITs are out there, larger companies are out there buying, especially looking for multifamily units. We were like, right here, take these, here we go. And very, very happily done.
So what does it take to do that? I mean, was it scary? Was there something kind of out of whack? Did you feel like, I don't know that for sure this is going to work? I mean, because if it's that difficult for most people to buy when there's blood on the streets, which I think is another part of that same quote, why did you just move ahead fearlessly and do it?
Stubborn.
Stubborn is good. I understand stubborn.
There's a persistence in problem solving, and getting people around you and in your team who are focused on solving a problem rather than, oh, here's a problem. It's like, okay, give me 3 options around it. And there may only be one option around, but let's talk about what options are there to get the ball over the end goal line. That's really what it comes down to. And at one point, one of my partners looked at me and says, okay, I know you're working on it. I can't take the up and down and the back and forth of the banks and the attorneys and this, and just tell me when I need to be there to work on it. As we're working through all that side of it, and as we're working through stuff, and he and I are always on the same page, which takes a lot, and sometimes it takes sitting down and working through things. But and that's one of the things I just thank the Lord for a good partner and working through things that we can do that. It's very important to go into things. I've always heard horror stories about partnerships, but you've got to go in with a clear understanding. And there's even things where I've gone up front and said, look, I need to make sure you understand I'm doing this. And he's like, yeah, I know, that's fine. It's like, yeah, but I need to tell you that. And he'll call me up periodically and go, I think I'm going to do this construction. I'm going to repair this. We're going to do that. And he said, okay. He goes, I just want to be on the same page with you. Okay.
Yeah.
So, over communicate. It helps.
Err on the side of too much communication rather than not enough. That way there's no hard feelings, because you're almost constantly reselling yourself to the other partner, but not in a bad way. Just in a, I need to always remind the other partner, and they always need to remind me. That way you guys stay on the same page.
Well, it's a, what are you doing? And at those times when you're going, we stretched a little farther than we should have stretched for this. Reserves are looking thin. What's it going to take to get us, and stretching, and okay, gets that next step, and we just got to, put one foot in front of the next to get there, and then it pays off.
That makes sense. Give me a few examples. Like, what are some things because that's a lot of large multi-units, some smaller ones, medium-sized ones, large ones. What are some of the issues that come up that have stressed you and your partners out?
So I'll give you a short one, which is when you're purchasing from a sheriff's sale, the bank always wants to have the title before they give you the money. The sheriff will not release the title until they get the money. Fix that problem. Yep. So, and that's where having a good real estate attorney who says, oh, I have a title company, we can set it up and make sure this is covered. He gives a short bond basically over to the attorney's going to write to me and tell me I'm using the wrong language. He sends a nice letter over. It's covered to the bank. The bank releases the funds. We get over to the sheriff. And about 30 days later, the title comes in and goes over to the bank. Everybody's happy. Okay. But if you don't do that, you can't get the loan, and you're paying cash for stuff that I didn't have that much money to reach my pocket and pay for. but I was still able to leverage and buy, that kind of a property, 26 unit building, and with occupants, about 3/4 occupied at the time. That's, and it cash flows well. So those are kind of the difficulties you come across.
Gotcha.
So
What do you look for? A buying criteria? I mean, when you're saying 3/4 occupied, seems like a good value play there because there's a bunch that you can still add to it. So if it's working at 3/4, be even better when you push it up to 90, 95, 100. But what are the other sorts of value plays that you look for?
So the first piece we look for, first one is location. Is it worth looking for? Is it a dangerous area? We've gone to places where you know, drug addicts were literally jumping out of the windows as you're coming through the hallways. You're like, okay, this is just get me out of here. Show me the exit. So other properties, you're like, well, this is a little gem hidden back here.
Okay.
Okay. So you go through, check the bones of the building. Is it structurally sound? Is it, the HVAC systems, the plumbing, the electric, all of that. We did buy an aluminum building, or a building with aluminum wiring in it.
Okay.
And then again, working through with the insurance company, what does that look like? Because you're always paying a premium on that insurance when you've got aluminum wiring in there. Is the water good? Are the water pipes good? Are the sewers good? Those are your big costs. And then you're looking at aesthetics. How old is it inside? Does it look like the first house my wife and I bought that hadn't been refurbished since the 60s? And I was like, oh, yeah, this has got to go. But those are lower cost items that can be done over time versus, oh my word, the roof is leaking and there's literally a rainforest in one of the units. That's a problem.
Gotcha.
So, and I've seen that. And I've seen it where it's raining inside a building on a bright sunny day and you're just going, wow, there's some serious problems with this structure. We're walking away.
Yeah.
So
there's the issues that come up with the properties. What kind of issues come up with all those tenants, Charles?
From a tenant perspective.
Yeah.
So wow. Machine gun number of answers inside my head.
I gotcha.
So, the first one, are there actual leases? Were they screened? Can I see the screening criteria? Did somebody fill the building up real fast with, hey, I know you're on the street right now, but come on in and stay in this unit. Those kind of things. Is it good documentation? That's one of the first pieces. And then what can you do from there? What residents are going to move in there? That's where, again, that location is important.
Mm-hmm.
I've got locations where a lot of nurses, a lot of seniors and elderly because of a park. Those are some low maintenance, easy care. Those are kinds of things I love. Looking for those kind of, I say, tenant markets, if I can say it that way, because that's what the tenant desires, and that tenant is who I'm looking for because they're stable, they're long term, they're looking to improve their life and have a good, solid housing experience. I want to be able to provide that.
Gotcha. Now, do you have a scale? I've heard, some people call it, A, B, C, D neighborhood, or 1, 2, 3, 4, or sometimes in reverse, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do you have a way you score a neighborhood?
Honestly, within neighborhoods, there are so many blocks. I'm not in the A communities.
Yeah.
So we'll just start there.
Yeah. Okay. I think we all understand what A would be.
Yeah.
It'd be super fancy and nice.
Yeah. It say on the high end side of town, and the cops look at you as you drive through, like, okay, I'm just driving through.
Yeah.
But going to, your B and C neighborhoods, and especially inside of a C neighborhood, especially, you'll find areas that are really bad and really good. And that's part of what makes it a C neighborhood. And knowing the different blocks and really learning the community and seeing it at, noon on Tuesday, 11 o'clock on Friday night. Yeah. What does 6 o'clock on Sunday evening look like? Is it party festival or is it's families out? That's one of the first things we say, hey, there's some kids out playing and stuff. That tells me that the moms trust the neighborhood enough as well. Okay. Versus, and I'm saying with moms watching them, versus I've seen kids just running around, throwing stones at stuff. It's like, this is a problem area. So, you can use some things like that to look at it to go, this part of the block, or this block is attached to an area that's good. Let's look at investing here.
So you could say, when you look at a C neighborhood, you're then breaking it down further to C plus, C minus.
Yeah, well, I'd even go B and D.
Gotcha.
And when you hit one of those areas where, the rain's coming in, or the drug dealers are hopping out the window, or drug users are hopping out the window, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes you've got to go in and chase off the riffraff to clean up the building. And do you have the wherewithal to do that?
Mhm.
Some people won't. Some people curl up and go, no.
Yep.
I had pulled into one of our buildings at one point, and literally was just pulled in. I was waiting for my partner to get there. I'm in, blazer and such, and this car pulls in, and these two guys hop out, and they've got hair down, they've got tats and stuff like this. One of them hops up, and one stands in front of my car, and the other one comes around the side of the car, and they said, "Sir, who are you? What are you doing here?" I said,
I own the building.
"Yeah, I own this building. What are you doing here?" And they looked at me and said, "Oh," pulled their badges out. They were policemen.
Jeez.
I would have never expected them to be policemen.
Wow.
And I just looked at them like, no, this is my building. Who are you and why are you here?
Yeah.
And they went, "Oh, well, we're under. So by all means, please keep coming in." And they've been hired by the previous management company to do checks on the property. So I was glad they were there. We had a great conversation and made them feel welcome.
Yeah, of course. It literally takes all kinds. So that's now you've bought them, you've improved them, I'm assuming increased the value of them from that improvement, both the physical improvement to the property and the tenant mix improvement.
Correct. Absolutely.
And then you've been turning around and selling them off.
Yeah.
So in many ways, a slow flip is one way of looking at it.
It is, especially with a multifamily. It's a longer process.
Yeah.
The single family, you can turn around and out you go. But when the multi, you're stabilizing, which means you get into longer term maintenance issues, more people issues, working through with residents. Having a good resident manager is fantastic, especially if you're smaller than like 50 or 60 units. It doesn't support necessarily having somebody on site.
Mm-hmm.
Having good resident managers, they like to take care of the building because they live there. And when you find those people, one example I'll give you is we had one of the buildings we purchased had 4 buildings next to each other, and they were 12 units apiece. But that basement unit that had the laundry room in it was basically a full size apartment unit, which means it was a party room every night. So you had 4 party rooms at this place every single night. And it was like, oh my word, and especially if they started to fight. So our first thing when we bought it was we went through, literally shut it down to 8x8 laundry rooms with a boarded off door and overbuilt those walls so you couldn't tear them down. And suddenly the parties kind of shifted outside, and people decided this isn't necessarily the place to be, especially when they realized everything was on camera. And 3 months into it, the fire department comes through to do their inspection, and their comment was, you guys have really helped stabilize this community. And we're like, man, we feel like we're just at the very beginning. And they're like, no, you don't understand. We got calls here all the time. We're going to get some calls, but it's dropped off tremendously. And we're like, yeah, there's a few people we got rid of right off the bat.
You got rid of a few people, and you got rid of their space to cause trouble.
To cause trouble, party, and the incentive to come there for other than just people who live there.
Yeah. Yeah, rather than the common room that nobody particularly cares about if you put a fist through the wall or spray or whatever. I mean,
Exactly.
No one cares about destroying it because it's communal space.
Yeah.
It's not their individual space. Interesting.
Yeah, the sticky floor with the broken glass on it was like, no, we're not doing this.
So Charles, you're not managing these yourself?
No.
So
we did probably about the first 68, we were managing much more personally. A couple of good resident managers.
First, how many? 68 units?
Yes.
2 shy of 70. Just to make sure it's not 628, but 68. Okay.
68 we
Gotcha.
were managing personally. And again, a good property manager at each site helps tremendously.
Mhm.
We had, and it's, and Tom, when I see you get involved with people, literally we had one of our resident maintenance guys ended up having a seizure one night walking up the stairs, and he'd gone downstairs to get his laundry and fell backwards, landed on his head. I get a call from his wife, and they didn't have a car, so I went over and picked her up. We go up to the hospital, and over the next 3 or 4 days, the university hospital said he's in a coma and he's not going to come out. He was actually brain dead, and was there with her when they took him off life support, went through that process. Just things you never thought about being involved with when you're getting it. I'm going to buy this little apartment building. Okay. Oh my word. And she's looking at me like, what are the doctors saying? I don't understand.
Gotcha. Yeah, the human element.
There is, and that's part of what you're signing up for. So
be ready.
Yeah.
What people that want to get into commercial properties, want to get into multi-unit properties, what advice do you have?
Make sure you have a good team. First and foremost, a good team, whether that's on the and advisors that you can go, I have a question.
Yeah, gotcha.
I just sent an email back to my attorney on another day. I said, I'm sorry to be dense, but what does this term mean? He's like, oh, that's, in the event of a death, this person transfer. Oh, okay. Got it. Like, I just didn't know the initials,
Yep.
And being willing to ask questions. So you don't just go, okay. I've seen people do that, go, okay, yeah. I'm thinking they did not understand what was just said. And sure enough, they walk, now we're out. They didn't even know what they were getting involved with.
Gotcha.
So really figuring those pieces out. One of the interesting things that I found is when you move past a 4-unit building and going up into 12, 16, 20 units, the levels of efficiency that you get, it's tremendous, because that roof that would cover the 4-unit may cover a 12-unit.
Gotcha.
Same size roof.
Yeah.
Guess what? It only costs, if you break it down on a per unit basis, it's only 1/4 of the cost or 1/3 the cost to put the new roof on a per unit square cost. So those are kind of things where you can start to go, okay, now I've got a little more money to play with. What am I going to do? What do I look at for amenities instead of just, hey, I've got a single family and I'm turning around and selling it. My amenities might be a little bit different. So I've got a park view. Do I put some benches in there, but make sure they're for my residents, not for somebody else? Because I don't want to draw the wrong people and then put my residents at risk. So, and part of that's talking through the community and your residents, finding out what they want. On the commercial side, though, is also a good relationship with the bank and asking them up front, do you have an appetite for something like this?
Asking the bank if they have the appetite.
If they have an appetite for something like this, because some banks will go, oh, sure, we'll take applications all day, and they'll piddle around and you're 2 months down the road and still nowhere forward. So that's a key question. Just how to interview the bank is a process. From there, then it's, being ready to provide all the documentation you need. And again, I'm thinking in terms of loans, because typically you're not buying a commercial property with cash. It's, I need some sort of loan to put together to do this.
Gotcha.
So, that's.
What kind of banks have you had more, I don't want to say luck, but what kind of banks have you had more luck with? What banks have been more accepting to taking on the challenge that you're asking them to take on?
So some of the smaller banks have been good. And those are, like local regional banks that actually look for investors. They understand what investors are looking for. The downside is they're going to be about 2% more than a big bank. But 2% really not much when you start looking at, my partner and I make the comment, I want enough room in this that I can make mistakes and still make money. Because we made mistakes. And I can tell you, some of those things you're thinking, oh my word, if we'd have bought this on, you start talking cap rates and all that. No, I'm not that comfortable in how skilled I am. I want to make sure I've got plenty of room to mess up if I'm going to go forward. So we leave that room in there.
Do you go ahead?
No, it's so U.S. Bank has been one that I've used, but we've also gone out to private investors, and especially starting up, private investors were very helpful. And sitting down with them and saying, here's what we want to do, communicating with them, laying out the details of it, and they, friends and family kind of thing. And that put the deal together. And that helped us get to the 68, so that when we came to the 168, the banks went, you guys have been doing this, you got experience, we want to do this deal. And part of that 168 was even seller financed. So that makes it even a little easier and asking for it sometimes. So those are kinds of questions that, depending on how motivated they are, what the interest levels are, you can kind of dig through that. Again, problem solving.
Yeah. Interesting. And so compare it to, because I get this question all the time, but people want to do commercial, get into commercial, because like you say, the scale of it is huge. The scalability of it is great. I mean, the same roof, like you said, for one property can the same cost can cover a lot larger properties. So at what point would one make a shift? Is it a beginner thing, jump straight into commercial? Is it, should you flip a few houses first? Should you get your feet wet in single family? Because some people say yes, some people say no. I want to know, what say you?
So a friend of mine started with a single family and was well financed, mind you, and it grew his eventually over from 1990 up through now. He's, they've got 8,000 units.
Okay.
He merged with another company that had about 4,000, and then they've continued to purchase, in part because, they groom their investors, and here's what we're looking at, here's what we're going to next, and they've shown that they can turn a good rate, good return for them. So the investors keep coming back, and they've been able to grow a portfolio. Far more than I'm interested in doing, but
Yeah.
but there's a model there of, if you start a little, start with a small house and start to make sure you put your teams in place and things and walk through that. I was really just doing an interview the other day, and one of the questions they said was, all this house flipping crowd that's out there. Doing an interview with the NPR Marketplace, and they were asking about, this crowd. And I said, the problem is most of that HGTV crowd that's out there, what they're not showing you is the depth of capital they have for when they tear into a wall and go, oh, they kind of do a little, oh, isn't this drama on television? But if it blows your budget out of proportion, especially when you're talking, everything other than the California prices,
Yeah.
those can really blow up your budget, and one or two of those can sink a lot of people. So learning it at that level and really making sure you've got contingencies in place, your budget gives you enough allowance for things, then moving towards that next level of, okay, a 4-unit, getting a couple of those under your belt, moving up to the next step. Because when it comes to the bank side of things, one of the things they said was, what's your business plan? I said, well, we want to buy this. And they said, no, give it to us in writing. And part of it was a little bit of a, okay, let's just think through what we need to do. And literally our business plan was 3 pages. Here's what we want to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's the expertise we have. Here's our advisors. Here you go. And they said, perfect. You guys thought it out. That was, and the fact that you thought it out and articulated it gave them comfort in moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the time commitment in the midst of all that? Is it front loaded when you first take over property? Is there a constant thing? I know you said you're running it as a business so you can walk away, but there's still some time commitment. What is that time commitment?
Yes, absolutely front loaded. A lot of my part, I ended up doing a lot of the financing aspects of it. So before we even get to it, sending emails, putting the paperwork together, getting the LLCs put together, pulling all of those pieces together is, and I'm touching base with my partner as we get closer. We need to get the budgets for renovation, put these things together, and we'll go through and walk them together. Putting that whole package together, and then over the next 1 to 3 months after purchase, if you really focus on it at that time, that can eliminate a lot of your headaches going forward from there. And some of them, the bigger projects, are going to take, a year. And we had one that was a year, and working through one hazard, one issue, one problem, 4 in the morning shooting after, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
So those are kinds of issues that you deal with. And just, the more you take care of it on the front and invest in it and take care of it and do it the right way up front. And that's one of the things, the maintenance guy asked a question. Well, we could do this or do that. What's the right way? This way.
Gotcha.
Get it done that way. Well, it's going to cost an extra $4. You know what?
Do it.
The repair cost, if you don't do this, I probably have to come back in about a couple of weeks to a month or maybe 2, and it's going to cost another $65. Okay, well, see,
Yeah. And get it, do it right the first time, because otherwise it costs more to rip it out and redo it than it would have these slightly more cost to do it right from the get go.
Right. And
Gotcha.
Some of those things you can do. I'll give you an example. We do glass top stoves. One is residents go, wow, this is a nice amenity. This looks really nice. It's newer. They're also really easy to clean.
Gotcha. This is a piece of glass on an electric stove.
Exactly. It's simple. It's clean it, off you go. And so when you're turning units, you just saved a couple hours of maintenance time, and the resident's got a nice amenity. Yeah. So those are, some things like that you can do. You start to learn and go, you know what? Yeah, we went into one building that had 4 kitchens and dining rooms with carpeting. We're like, no, those got to go. That's straight to a
good mess.
Yeah, from tile to wood to vinyl to different things you're trying and seeing what works and what works with the neighborhood. What do they want?
Yeah. Good. So 10 to 13 years, build it up, improve it, make good money as you go, and then cash out and do more things, do different things, take care of your family, retire early.
You can, or just, I've got you put some passive investments out there and let those continue to grow. Bought a little, I think I told you, I bought a car wash.
Awesome.
Little express car wash. Got that running. That's one of the little businesses out there, working on some other stuff. And just, we have sat down. I was offered 2 engineering businesses this year or last year. And we looked at them hard. I just don't know enough about steel and grinding and all that to go, this makes sense or it doesn't. And I just had to walk away from them.
Yeah.
The other side is my investors and go, you're not comfortable with it and you walked away. Okay. When you say you're comfortable and you really are, we're good with it. Because they also see you walking away from, on paper, what could be a really good deal, but you don't have it's not a real estate issue that I've got. I'm comfortable with that and I understand it. That business, I didn't understand. And I don't want to pay the price of learning it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not you don't want to pay a very steep education fee.
Exactly.
As the case may go. Okay. Awesome. Charles, so that's on your investing side, commercial side. So I appreciate that, because I know a lot of people, lots of questions on that. So it's helpful to hear from the front lines what actually happened, how that works. Now, you said at the beginning that your day job, in a way, is you're a registered lobbyist and you handle political work for real estate investors in the Apartment Association and the National Real Estate Investors Association. So that affects all of us, whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, whether we're on the left, right, center, or somewhere else. It affects all of us. So let's talk politics for a little bit.
Okay. That's always a good way to perk people up.
Yes. We just snap everyone back to attention. So what kind of issues do you routinely deal with for real estate investors? And what's coming down the pike? What do you see in the future?
So there's a couple of different issues that we've been dealing with. Affordability is one of the biggest across the board.
Affordability.
Affordability, and real estate investors are really in kind of the best place to address that issue, because those C property or C communities we talked about before, as you move from that C into that D and maybe E area, especially D can typically be recapitalized. And what happens is now what was a C community becomes a C plus community. And the area that was abutting that was an E, now kind of moves up to a D property.
Okay.
But that level of housing where somebody can say, you know what, I'm only making $10 an hour or $8 an hour. I'm putting 2 part-time jobs together. I need someplace that I can live. You know, when you're a local investor and you're able to look them in the eye, talk to them, communicate with them back and forth, there's a greater interpersonal need for that. And affordability is really where small investors can actually help the most, and have been helping, with over 50% of the country renting that way. So it's very effective, but the affordability, I'll say, theme or mantra is kind of this, you know, the guy who ran for president a few years ago, rent's too darn high kind of thing. And we just need it, you know, it's like, okay, well, you're living in New York, well, they've got their own issues. And when you start breaking down on a regional level where the rent's too high, there's typically barriers to housing in place and barriers to development and lots of regulation in place that drive investment away. That's just the realities of how life is. And being able to clearly articulate that to decision makers is very helpful. The other one is the eviction issue. We deal with that all the time. And it's one of those things, if there's not a consequence if you don't pay something, you know, I can walk into Kroger and, hey, I just help myself to everything, go into Publix, help myself out with everything, and I just walk out. Don't stop. Well, okay, that doesn't do any good. We're finding that out. Prosecutors around the country that are doing that. And stores are going, I don't think we're going to do business here.
Right.
So in areas where investors and property owners are not allowed to actually maintain their buildings, and the more the government comes in and tells them, oh, we know better than you how to run your property, what happens is you get fewer and fewer people who are saying, okay, I'll let you do that. They say, oh, okay, I'll divest and I'll move someplace else and I'll reinvest into other areas. And the de-investment that we're going to see and continue to see in some of these over-regulated markets, you know, it's escalating, and it's going to continue to escalate. There was a comment that was made. I'm going to get political here for a second. You're going to see the difference in communities are kind of like East Germany and West Germany. One is very profitable, non-regulated, lets the marketplace work, lets investment work, lets people actually make their own decisions. And let's face it, that's a heck of an incentive. If I'm out selling a widget and nobody wants to buy my widget, I better improve my widget to make it better. It's the same for housing. If I can't get renters in, maybe I actually should fix that ceiling and the roof and
improve the housing and get the renters in.
Suddenly they start flowing in. And if I'm in an area where they're like, no, you can't do that without 16 pages of paperwork and it's cost this, and you have to go get these kind of people, and only these people are allowed to do the work.
Yeah.
You disincentivize investment in an area.
So an over-regulated area is something to be cautious of and aware of going forward, because it's going to put a big strain on you as an investor. And an area with more normalized, lesser, let's say, regulations or regulatory red tape is an easier area to invest in.
It is. And I'll go back to the investor side of things for a minute. Even in a more heavily regulated area, if the inspectors know that you're trying to do the right things, they will typically back off from you for the most part. they might come down and hit you once in a while to say, because what you have to understand is they're getting hit from their bosses, that they have to have some things that are actually closed, not just, man, this guy that doesn't live around here, I've sent him 16 tickets and nothing's happened. My boss is yelling at me. Well, I'll go over and give Tom a violation on this thing and he'll solve it real fast. And I look good and he looks good. Look at, and you're like, really? Why are you? And once you understand that, they're like, no, it's fine. Just go ahead and take care of that. It's fine. I'll send you the paperwork on it and you just send me pictures back. We're good. And I've seen that more than I care to admit. And behind the scenes, what it is bureaucrats trying to take care of themselves. And in a heavily regulated environment, that's what they do.
Imagine that. Yeah. Shocking. I'm shocked to find this gambling in here.
Yeah.
Interesting. What other, because I know you deal at local level, state level, federal level. So what do we as investors which level do we need to be most concerned with?
Local is always most important. Always make sure you're paying attention to the local level. What transpires at the local level will inspire at the state level. So that motivates the state legislators to get involved to do things because they're seeing it at their local level. Constituents drive legislation. So if there's a bad issue, and typically it's not something that's illegal, or let me say that it's not something that's not illegal. Okay. It's probably already illegal with all the laws we have on the books, but by golly, that legislator is going to make sure that specifically is mentioned and that specifically issue is legally redistricted or rewritten or recoded so that this issue cannot occur again. That's what happens if something's not taken care of at the local level. The council members, the mayors will get on it, and then it goes up to the state level, and the state will start looking at potentially doing laws once it hits a couple of areas. So that's really where most people live. That's where the most legislation comes from that impacts you the most.
Interesting. So in many ways, it's the opposite of the cliche. The proverbial is rolling uphill.
Exactly. Yeah, it really does. At the federal level, the rules that are coming out, and this is the most difficult part. It's really not. It's going to sound strange. It's not Congress that really causes the most stress. That gets the headlines. Yeah. And the problem is they get the headlines when the regulations that come out from EPA, OSHA, HUD, Department of Justice, one after another keep coming out. CDC just extended. Yeah, I mean, those kind of regulations, orders, edicts that just keep coming out and keep rolling and keep generating. Tom DeLotte used to say, it's the termites eating away at the structure of the fabric of the country. Nice. And that's what each one of these regulations and rules is doing. You're just burying people under it. And at some point, all these, if I can use this analogy, at some point there's enough straw that breaks the camel's back. Yep. So
what do we do? What do we, as your average real estate investor, flip some houses, own some rentals, own some commercial, your average run-of-the-mill American real estate investor? What do we do to protect ourselves?
So I'm going to go to a different story. So when I first ran for city council, you have to go out and get signatures to get on the ballot. And I walked around, I had to get 25 voter signatures in order to do that. So you end up getting, 37, 50, something like that to make sure you got enough. I had one door where the person asked me a couple of questions. And I had one door where the couple, nice older couple, said, "Mr. Tassell, why don't you come in here and sit down? We'd like to talk to you." And so we went in, sat down, and they started asking me some questions. And about 5 minutes into it, I just said, "Thank you." They said, "What?" I said, "You're the first people that really asked any questions. All these people are signing." And, you smile and say, "Hey, I'm running." They're like, "Oh, okay." Yep. at that level, asking, you know, who that is, what do they stand for, and being willing to say, I don't think I can support that. I use an example of Pat Teaberry, who was a politician in Ohio, and I don't say that in a pejorative sense, just a fact.
Just
But
making that clear.
yeah, he was a township trustee for about 4 years, and eventually he became a state representative. Right after that 4 years, he did about 6 or 8 years at township trustee, congressional seat open, and he went to Congress. So that person that you're signing that little petition for to be a trustee might be a state rep in 4 years or 6 years, might move on to Congress from there. And the experiences that they pick up at that local level, they carry with them the whole way. So that's one of those things that's like, it doesn't take much at a local level. Hey, you know what? I've got 6 units, you know, scattered around. I'll put your sign out. I really like what you stand for. I'm going to support you in this, and I'll write you a $25 or $50 check. That's a good statement. And guess who they're going to call when a housing issue comes up or a rental issue comes up? They're going to call you and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Mm-hmm.
Give them the comment, give them the feedback. That's really what, if local investors did more of that, that helps more than, we talk about, pitchforks and torches going to City Hall after the third reading of something. And everybody's like, how did this get this far? And they're like, well, where have you been? On my cards as a councilman, on the back side of it, it had the hours and times that we met and the location, and invite people, please come down to council. Inevitably, we'd have the same 3 people who sat in the audience. And every once in a while, there'd be a couple extra people. We all kind of went, hey, there's extra people here today. Something must be going on, and one of the ladies had said, I've lived here for my whole life. I've never been to one of these meetings. Shame on me. I'm going to start coming more. That was the only time we saw her. It's like, and I get it. We're busy, but popping in once a year to a meeting, very helpful.
Gotcha. Show your face, be known, start to influence at the very local level, because that'll obviously work quite well in the present day, but also as that person moves up in their political career, then you gain a value from it as well. Plus, it doesn't sound like you have much competition, so to speak. It should be easy to get the ear of the legislator, of the politician, because if there's only 3 or 4 other people there, you're not exactly walking into a crowded space.
Right. And people come up and they get real nervous, and it's like, don't be nervous. We're all just people, tie our shoes the same way, and just one of the comments I like to say is, I'm on appointed to a zoning appeals board. And one of the comments I said, look, we're just neighbors trying to help each other. And a couple of the board members looked at me and went, yes, that is right. And this is what the law says. This is what the code says. Here's how we get, and that's really, when you look at it from that perspective, suddenly it's not, well, it's them way up there in their elevated seats. And yeah, you'll get arrogant people once in a while, but most people really are, especially at the local level, just trying to help and do something in their neighborhood.
That works. Because you think about it, you see the exact impact on, if you don't do things that work in your neighborhood, you see the exact impact on how quickly that can impact your bottom line as a real estate investor, as a landlord, as a multi-unit landlord. And when favorable things happen, how much better your business can get. Because if you have less red tape, there's less expenses, your bottom line tends to go up.
Yep. And I love it when my assets appreciate. I don't necessarily like to pay the taxes on them,
Sure.
but I like it when my assets appreciate.
It's not a bad problem to have. I don't want to pay taxes either. But if there's suddenly more of a tax bill because the thing's appreciated, excellent. If there's more of a tax bill because the taxes just went up, not so nice.
Correct. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Charles Tassell, fantastic. That is, I think, a very interesting perspective on how to handle things politically and the best spot to do it. There's a lot of value in hitting that local area first. And I love seeing how that you've also parlayed your experience dealing with other real estate investors into becoming one yourself as well, and running that all at the same time is
Absolutely.
fantastic.
Absolutely.
Worked out well for you career-wise, right?
It has helped tremendously. I appreciate it. I like it. Having, it's a good experience as well. And you ask what people can do.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something and they're going to go, not me. No, never.
Let's hear
Run
it.
for local office.
Run for local office. Why do you say that?
Get involved. A lot of times people, especially now, we're a, I don't volunteer for anything kind of communities anymore. People are so busy.
Yeah.
There's not people willing to do it. And as Plato said many years ago, if you don't participate, you're going to be ruled by people who are dumber than you.
Yes. Okay.
So either, you're either going to be ruled by your inferiors or you help participate.
Okay.
And that may mean, sure, I'll sit on a housing board, or I'll sit on a zoning board, or I'll sit on, and we meet once a year, maybe, or maybe we meet twice a year. And then the next thing they know is say, hey, we've actually got an opening on our council. Would you consider it? Well, sure. Okay. Next thing you know, you're running for mayor 6 years down the road because you're just taking care of your community. And especially in small towns across America, that's really where we're at. And especially if you're already an investor, you understand what investing in your community means. So, this is just one more aspect of that life. And if you're networking already as a real estate investor, this is just a natural progression of that.
Yeah, certainly builds onto that. So don't be afraid of the old saying, how finding out how laws and sausage are made. You shouldn't be afraid. You should get in there and at least make good sausage.
Exactly. Absolutely. Love it.
Solid laws. Good to know. Charles Tassell, thanks so much for the interview. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Tom. Anytime. Glad to help. Appreciate all you do.